I've been cautiously excited for the Avengers game for a while now. The idea of a proper AAA Avengers game has been extremely intriguing and exciting as a massive superhero fan. Even after last year's divisive reveal, I've still remained optimistic about the game overall. How could I not? It's a proper AAA Avengers game. But putting my blind excitement aside, I still had my reservations about the game, some of which included how they would balance having a literal god and a super spy as playable characters side by side, a loot system in a superhero game, and mission design for multiplayer missions. So when Square Enix announced the beta a few weeks ago, I was extremely excited to learn how they were going to handle these aspects of the game. So did Square Enix prove all the haters wrong, or did they just confirm their reservations? Well, yes and no. Now, don't get me wrong, this game is by no means bad, not by a long shot, but there are a lot of issues that could prove extremely detrimental to the game at launch. First off, the combat can be extremely satisfying or extremely annoying. Not always, but a lot of the time this boils down to who you play as. For example, playing against any of the enemies with shields as Hulk can be extremely frustrating, as their primary ways to break their shields are by charge attacks or a vault. The problem is Hulk can't vault over the shields, and the charge attack takes a while, and they usually can get an attack in while doing the charge, so they are extremely difficult to play against when you're playing as Hulk. And honestly, Hulk in general is just really bad in the game. Out of all the 6 heroes, he consistently felt like the most clunky and button mashy to play as. Furthermore, for a hero that should be the best at crowd control, he's probably the worst out of all the beta heroes. Kamala has long sweeping attacks that are good for keeping enemies back. Black Widow's ultimate is extremely effective at doing quick and easy damage, and Iron Man's laser mode allows him to do damage to every nearby enemy, where Hulk just feels like so much wasted potential in that department. The other heroes, on the other hand, are really fun to play, specifically Iron Man. He is easily the most versatile of all the heroes in the game, and this is really due to 2 things: his flight, which allows for both ground and aerial combat, and 2, his different modes for his heavy attacks. He has lasers that do lower damage but are great for crowd control as they have a 360-degree attack area. Second are the rockets that do heavy damage and spread but have a limited use. And third are the repulsors that only hit one single target but are the quickest to fire and drain their energy the least. Because of the enormous versatility of Iron Man, he quickly became my favorite character to play as in the beta, despite the lackluster introduction in A-Day for him. The combat overall, though, may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I personally had a lot of fun with the arcade beat-em-up combat. It felt like a mix between the hefty feel of God of War and the superhero abilities of DC Online. Though, a common issue with that would be there's a lot of going on screen, and that becomes extremely confusing as to what's going on, especially during Black Widow's ultimate ability, which often leads to heavy frame drops. Something that can be extremely frustrating about the combat, though, is some of the shield enemies. Because when there is a lot going on, it can be really annoying to break all of their shields, because vaulting isn't as fluid as it is in the Arkham games, or as fast. So breaking their shields and trying to crowd control it can be very annoying. Probably the most concerning part of the beta for me, though, was the insanely repetitive and samey and dull structure of the missions outside of the campaign missions. Most of the missions have an extremely samey go here, fight enemies, go there, destroy this thing, or protect this thing from enemies. This is even more of a problem in the drop zone, because they all feel like they are so uninspired and dull. The war zones are slightly better, but the semi-open world marketing they have is just flat out wrong. These areas might as well just be drop zones with larger play areas. It's not to say they're all bad. The highest level in the beta has a boss battle with a giant robot that requires you to target specific points, but as a whole, the missions are very uninteresting, both mechanically and visually. Almost all of them require you to go to the same looking aim base over and over and over again. The loot in this game is a weird situation. For many, the fact it doesn't change cosmetics is extremely disappointing. But for me, I really don't care that much, as I'd rather be able to have exactly what I want to look like, no matter the gear. But nevertheless, it does feel odd not to have cosmetic changes for gear items, and it kind of lessens the sense of progression with that gear. Speaking of looks, graphically, the game looks fine. The graphics aren't like out of this world, but they are pretty good, except for one major aspect. Sometimes the lighting can be very, very bad, and I mean really bad. It doesn't detract from gameplay or anything, but it's noticeable, especially when they're looking at the faces. For example, at the end of the second mission, there's a cutscene where Bruce is talking and the sunlight makes his face look so awkward, especially with his beard. Performance-wise, the beta struggled a bit. Obviously, the point of a beta is to iron out these issues, but I thought it important to mention them anyway. First off, the frames and resolution dip a lot, especially when the chaos starts happening on screen. which can be quite often. I've also heard some major issues on PC, including rainbow syndrome and missing faces like Assassin's Creed Unity. Graphically, I don't have anything like that, but I experienced a game breaking bug that required me to completely restart the beta by deleting my save. In the second mission, there was a part that crashed no matter what I did. I would go in and it would crash 2 seconds after that, and this happened around 8 times in a row. Overall, I thought the beta was okay. It's nothing super impressive because of the admittedly fun but uninspired combat, the repetitive multiplayer missions, and the choppiness of the story missions, which likely was purposely done to avoid spoilers, but at the same time, because of that, they don't really do anything to reel you into this narrative. This game has really, really big potential to be a great game after launch. I just think it will eventually be that. But for now, it's just slightly above average. So overall, I'd probably give this beta like a 6 out of 10.